Y'all, Georgia's kind of boring. I mean, that's Georgia's a little bit boring, and that's not a knock on Georgia. If anything, that is a salute to Georgia. Like, this part of the year, we're all trying to pick apart every single roster, and we're all trying to pick apart different storylines because football games are going to be played here in the not-too-distant future. And so we do our very best to inspect all these teams to the nth degree. And the more that you have wrong or the more that you have on your roster that's interesting, we're going to talk about it. And you've noticed now, there's not a whole lot of people talking about Georgia. There's a reason for that. So what is the most interesting thing about Georgia right now? We'll talk about it in a second. But if you're watching right now as a one-off video, we cut these segments as one-off videos. So thank you for that. Make sure you're subscribed. If you're a Georgia fan watching this, shout out to y'all. We talk college football every single day, live 3 times a week. We have Prediction Week starting next week on the On3 YouTube channel. This show, The Hard Count, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern. Get locked in. It's ball and only ball. It's a good time. Want y'all a part of it. So we appreciate you in advance for locking in and subscribing to this channel. So as I said, one more time, Georgia, a little bit boring right now. Best coach in college football, not much to talk about there. Elite roster, not a ton to pick apart there. Arguably the best quarterback in college football. There's not a whole lot of negative things to say about a dude that completed north of 70% of his passes. Great defensive talent. They've won multiple national championships in the last 3 years, and they're the favorite this year to win the national championship. So what is the most interesting thing about Georgia in 2024? To me, I think the most interesting thing about the Dogs is what's in front of them. And what I mean by that is if they win the national championship in 2024, as they are favored to do, that'll be 3 national titles in 4 years. Right now, we talk about Smart and Saban, I think, in a way of, hey, Smart could eventually be where Saban is. Hey, Smart is trending towards where Saban is. If Kirby Smart wins 3 in 4 years, he is squarely in that conversation. Like, the gap to me closes substantially. And whether it's fair or not, the way that I assess it is I think what Kirby Smart is doing right now and how he's done it, like being able to do it in the portal era, in the NIL era, in the expanded playoff era, like I think we would evaluate Kirby Smart's national championships. I don't know if differently is the right word, but I do think you have to distinguish the eras a little bit. And that's not to knock Nick Saban or water down what he's done. But I do think a national championship this year, you start to talk about Kirby in that statue kind of conversation. And maybe he gets a statue regardless, but I think a good way to kind of put this in perspective, and I hate that we're going to do this way, but we have to do it. Dabo Swinney, I'm a big fan of. I think he's phenomenal. I would love to see Clemson get back on the horse in the ACC and be a factor in the college football playoff. That's how I feel. A couple of years ago, Dabo Swinney had won 2 national championships. And so you kind of start that discussion of, okay, well, where does Dabo Swinney factor into that conversation of where Nick Saban's at and where the great coaches in college football are at? Dabo Swinney still factors in, but notice, since those 2 national championships, the volume on that discussion, on Dabo Swinney's legacy, hasn't been watered down, but I do think the volume has been turned down a little bit when you comp a Swinney to a Saban. I'm not trying to dunk on Dabo Swinney. I'm trying to put in perspective Kirby Smart and his two national championships. Like, if he were to not have the success he's had over the course of the next 5 to 10 years, and, he just has these 2 national titles to his name, you say, okay, yeah, he's one of the best coaches in the sport for sure, but, like, is he in Saban? Is he in the Saban category? Is he in the Saban territory? My gut would say no. But let's go back to what I was saying. Let's say that they do win their 3rd in 4 years. I think it's also a pretty good statement on where college football is. So this segment applies to you if you're a fan of Georgia, if you're a fan of Tennessee, if you're a fan of Oklahoma, you're a fan of Texas, if you're a fan of Iowa. Like, I think Georgia winning another national championship would be a statement on where college football is, because think about how much the sport has changed and the game has changed, right? The portal is now a big factor. NIL is a big factor. Offenses are changing a lot. The carousel is wild. Georgia, to be honest with y'all, is pretty old school in a lot of ways. And not in a way of like they're being passed by the sport. But you notice now, Georgia, they do things a little bit differently. They're a very fundamental kind of operation. They're not super heavy on the portal. When it comes to NIL, from what I understand, they are more so hey, you get here and you ball, you get paid. We're not going to do this whole thing where we drop you 4 bags to come get you to commit to the G. Now, of course, I don't think they're irresponsible in how they operate on the NIL front when it comes to recruiting, but I am just saying, like, they are you have to earn what you get here. It's a little bit old school for the most part when it comes to how people are approaching NIL in some ways. Also, talk about, like, the way that they operate on the depth chart level. A lot of guys have to wait their turn. You could be a 4 or 5-star player, come to Georgia, brother, put this beanie on your helmet. You're running down on scout team for us. It's like, wait a second, I was All-American, I was 5-star this, I was 5-star that. And it's like, yeah, but we got 2 to 3 other 5-stars in front of you. And so to have to wait your turn, one, it's coming more and more scarce these days. 2, it is a little bit, I think, of a testament to Georgia's culture and development. Like, development is not something you hear talked about nearly as much these days because everyone's always switching teams. If Georgia wins another national title this year, they will have done it with 2 different quarterbacks who had to wait their turn, Stetson Bennett and Carson Beck. And I think you got to give a lot of credit to Kirby Smart for a number of reasons, but I think for the culture he's put in place and the way he's communicated with his players of, like, if you trust us, if you trust our process, you trust the way that we do things, you're going to get yours. I know you want it right now. I know that's the world we're living in right now. It's all instant gratification, and Carson Beck said this when we sat down with him. Everybody wants everything at one click. Because you can right now. That's the world we're living in. You don't like where you're at, transfer. But if you trust us, you're going to achieve all that you want to do. This is a have one good year situation, and you're in the NFL and you're making a lot of money. Just trust us and have your one good year, ideally more, but you're going to be in good shape. And so if Georgia, going back to what we say here, if they win another national championship, and they can continue to make that pitch of we do things different here, it's a little bit old school, I think that'd be a lot of validation for what has always worked in college football still working, which is you coach your players hard. Kirby Smart, man, you hear stories about him being on the megaphone at practice, being on the mic at practice and getting after players. Like, coaches are a little bit more hesitant to do that these days because they don't want their guy to transfer out. Kirby Smart's like, I don't care, we got 3 5-stars behind you. You want to leave? Leave. We're going to coach you hard here. And coaching hard, I believe, is a sign of love. But that's another discussion for another time. Trenches. We've seen this be validated many times throughout the last couple of seasons in the college football world. But in the world of spread offenses like Georgia, yes, they do some spread concepts. They do some spread things. But I think who they are is unmistakable. They are a big person, move you up front kind of organization, both on offense and on defense. That still wins. That'd be more validation. Now, talk about the Georgia brand. If they win another national title, think about how much further that propels them. There's a couple of places at certain position groups that I think you have to make a compelling argument to tell me as to why you wouldn't go there if you're a high-level recruit. If Georgia wins another national championship, it's probably because the quarterback played great, probably because the wide receivers and the tight ends also did their job. Defense held up there into the bargain. Like, I'm looking down this list here of potential scenarios, and I cannot for the life of me figure out a reason why you would not pick Georgia. Now, this isn't me making a pitch to where if you're watching this and you're a recruit to go to Georgia, like, that's not what I'm saying here. What I am saying, though, is the pitch you can make if you're Kirby Smart and co., you got to give me a good reason why you fit better somewhere else. Because we have developed and helped guys get to the league and succeeded at the highest level now if they win another national championship at what feels like to me virtually every position. Now, wide receiver is probably a discussion that you would have after this season as to how they've developed those players, but I'm just trying to make sure we're on the same page here. Like, the brand and the reputation of Georgia to win a third in 4 years, it's already pretty sterling. I think it would be standard in 2024. Last thing I'll say, Saban's not in college football anymore. And Saban has been Kirby Smart's kryptonite. He's not there anymore. One less boss level for Kirby Smart to beat to get to where he wants to go. So what's the most interesting thing about a boring Georgia? They're so good, there's not a ton to pick apart. What they could do, what it would mean for the college football world if they were to win a third in 4 years. I think that's worth unpacking. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.